This is the Trippy Graphing Math Art channel, and I want to talk a little bit today about how I work with colors in my math animations and how that doesn't quite translate to this new 3D graph animation that I'm working on. So the first thing I want to point out is that I have a blue sky here, and one of my goals is maybe to make a sunset where the sky gets darker over time. So if I put a black layer over my blue, obviously that makes it darker. And then this transparency value, the bigger it is, the closer it is to 1, the darker the result is, right? So if I want this to fade in over time so that the sky gets darker as time moves on, what I can do is I can attach a slider to this value. So I have my slider H that's attached to this transparency value. And now what happens is as H plays, you can see we get slightly darker. And if I want it to get even more dark, then I can make this value bigger. And so I can see now it gets even darker as H plays, right? So you can just decide how big you want that coefficient, and then that's going to make different levels of darkness, okay? The other thing that's nice about this transparency value is it also helps me to make glowing circles, which could be like suns or anything that I want to glow, any light, anything like that. So right now we have a circle, right? And I have my list down here. So if I make a list of 11 elements, this is just 0 through 10, and I add this list to my circle definition, then it makes a bunch of overlapping circles. So then if I make the transparency of each of them smaller, you can see that overlap more prominently now, right? And then I can change this number to 0.1, which is going to make a lot more circles that are closer together in radius, all the way up to this 10 value. And now you can see like this really looks more like a glowing ball that could be like a sun. And then I can mess with the transparency again and until it looks how I want it to look, right? So that's how I can make a sun. And then I've explained in other tutorials how I make the sun move and how the rest of this works. But in this video, I just want to focus on changing colors. So if I go over to my 3D graph, the issue with the 3D graph, and I'm going to bring this slider down, is that they don't have a way to alter the transparency built into the graph. So if I want to make a darker layer of this grass, because as the sun goes down, I want the grass to get darker, there's no way using just this definition of the grass to make it fade in. If I make it dark, it's just going to become dark really quick. And for some reason, oh, there we go. I have to put it down here. Okay, so you can see it just becomes, it's just dark right away. I can't get it to fade in, right? So my workaround for this is how I define the colors. So here's all my list of colors that I use in my sunset, but a couple of them you can see have sliders attached to them, which cause the color values to change as the slider changes. So I think down here I have like some grass definitions, right? C104. You can see the color of the grass right now, right? And you can see how each of these values is attached to this slider that I'm using H1. So if I go down to H1 and I move it up a little bit, that makes the grass a little bit darker. If I go back up to C104, you can see now it's a darker color. So how I figured this out is I just figured out a target color I wanted to get to, which was like this dark grass. And so C104 now has the RGB values of 150, 32. So that was my target that I wanted to get to by the time the slider was done playing, right? So then what happens is the H and the H1 slider play together, and then that causes everything to move. It causes the sun to drop. It causes the colors of the sunset to come in and the reflection on the water. But then as that's playing, H1 is also playing, which is causing everything else to get darker at the same time. The mountains, the river, and then eventually the sun is fully set, and then the stars come out. So yeah, so that's what I've done so far with my 3D sunset, but the issue is I can't quite figure out how to make the sun look better without having those transparency values. And some of this is just a lot harder to figure out because I don't have all the same tools as I have in the 2D graph. So continue to follow along. I'll continue to post tutorials about how to do all this, and I'll also post updates on the projects I'm working on. So thanks for following, and I appreciate the support.